Hello everyone, once again, this is David Stearns from Haley Marketing Group, and welcome to today's Lunch with Haley webinar, Locking in Customers for Life. Today I am very excited to have a guest speaker presenting for us today. Her name is Teresa Jordan, and she is the founder of Jordan Staffing Resources. As the title tells you, today's webinar is going to be all about what it takes to win and keep customers for as long as you're in business. And I'm really excited to have Teresa here today. Looking at her bio, she spent the last 14 years consulting to the staffing industry, helping everybody from little independents up to the big guys find ways to service their clients more effectively. She's got expertise in just about all areas of staffing operations. And one of the things, Teresa, I really loved about your bio was that you talk about helping companies grow, not just financially, but helping the people grow personally, and that every business, every person has seeds of greatness, and your job is to bring them out. So I'm really excited to sit back and listen to you over the next hour as you can help us learn the seeds of greatness for service. So Teresa, if you want to take it away.
Great, David. Thank you so much. It's just an honor to be here, and I'm really very excited to be able to share some of the keys to locking in customers for life and really helping those that are participating to really walk away with some key nuggets that you'll be able to go back to your branch, go back to your business, and be able to implement and really make a difference in taking your service delivery to that next level and really providing you, equipping you for that success. You know, that's part of what I love about my job is that personal development, that if we really knew the greatness that existed within us and what we could do, I think it would just blow our minds. If we really knew the total potential that we had access to, and it's within us. So it's really exciting to be able to share some insights and best practices to locking in customers for life, developing that customer loyalty. I know in my years of experience, I've come across many staffing and recruitment firms that they have what I call the leaky bucket syndrome. And what I mean by that is it costs 6 times more to acquire a new customer, and there's so much that's involved in going after and bringing in new clients. I just know from a sales perspective, it just takes sometimes years to penetrate some of these accounts. And once we get them, then I call that again the leaky bucket syndrome. We're losing clients as fast as we're bringing them in. So what I want to really accomplish today is to help you put a plug in those leaky buckets so that you're able to really develop customers for life and really minimize turnover and eliminate it. And really, in my opinion, it's really zero tolerance. Unless a company goes away or they change product lines or it's something that is because of its company related, not competitor related. So let's take a look at, so what are the keys to locking in customers for life? Let's take a look at some of those insights and best practices. In order to thrive, not just survive in this new staffing industry environment, we really have to foster a culture and develop our service personnel in a way that they're radical and passionate about providing extraordinary service. We cannot just go at this business in a way of just delivering service, meeting the customer's expectations. We have to really make sure that everybody is in one accord. We have the same mindset that we want to go above and beyond. We want to deliver not what's usual, but what's unusual. Not what's just regular, but what is off the top shelf. And that takes really taking a different approach in this industry because it's so easy to get a mindset that's on the negative side because of what we have to deal with day in and day out. If you're in the staffing side with no-shows and turnover, or with direct hires where the individual doesn't take, they say they commit that they're going to take the job and then they don't actually, they take a counter offer. There's always opportunities for disappointment, but we have to make it with a purpose to not let that erode us and take us down and make us have a hardened heart, if you will. So we have to constantly be moving forward and making sure that we're delivering that extraordinary service. So let's take a look at some of the 4 factors for developing customers for life. Now I'd like to go into talking a little bit more about what some of those practices are. First of all, you must have a foolproof service delivery process, and you have to follow it consistently. Every staffing firm, every recruitment firm, you must have a standard operating system. It must be documented, and you have to have a process and have every single staff member trained on it. From as simple as how you answer the phone, that person, whoever is on the other end of the phone, is representing your company. Whether you're having a bad day or a good day, however you're coming across to that individual on the other side of that phone is representative of the company. So we have to have that service delivery process, from how we answer phones to how we progress customers to how we make arrival calls to how we make weekly update calls, to every single aspect of service delivery, how we go through the order fulfillment process, how we go through customer satisfaction, every piece of it, and we'll go through that in more detail. You must have that process in place, and it's that consistency is what matters. It's like I always use the example of McDonald's. You can go to any McDonald's, and I don't care. I'm a little bit of a junk food junkie here. Okay, I'm true confession. Their French fries are the same no matter where you're at and no matter what state you're in. That's the kind of consistency. You have to have that standard operating procedure for delivering extraordinary service. So that's key number 1. Number 2 is, this ties right into that. You have to be a pro at delighting the customer. You can't just meet the customer's needs. You have to go above and beyond. You have to be willing to go that extra mile with that customer, even if it's out of your comfort zone, to whatever it takes to delight them. That you want to make sure that their experience is one that, for every interaction, whether it's with your contracted employees, your temporary employees, your candidates for direct hires, or your clients, that every time you have an interaction with them, I really want to make sure that they leave knowing that they had an experience that they were delighted. So let's take a look at the third one, is you must create rapport and trust. Without rapport and trust, you have no relationship. And this business, a lot of what we do is about relationship. It's about rapport building. It's about getting into your client's business. What's important to them? Whatever is important to them needs to be important to you. Whether it's their children, or it's sports, or it's a college that they went to, whatever is they have passion about, you need to develop that. You have to have an interest. And that's going to show that you care. It's going to build rapport. It's going to build trust. And trust is also not only just from a personal standpoint, but it's showing that they're receiving value from you, knowing that they're appreciated, knowing that they're treated with respect and professionalism, and that they're receiving the quality that they deserve and that they're wanting. And the fourth one is, you must have a laddering service strategy. This ties right into the rapport and trust. As you're developing relationships at one level, maybe it's a client service specialist or a recruiter has a relationship with the ordering source. As a corporation, as a firm, you need to make sure for every single one of your customers that you have a laddered relationship. And what I mean by that is that maybe the owner or a manager, they need to have a relationship at a level above the ordering source, whether it's a director of human resources or a manager or the owner. It's going to vary by every single account. But you have to have that in place. And why that is important is because once that relationship with that ordering source, maybe the ordering source leaves the company, if you don't have other relationships in place, you are in high risk of losing that account. On the flip side of this, from a sales perspective, we live for that. Because when those relationships are in place and they're locked in, you cannot even penetrate that account with that relationship. That you have to have those strategic sales plans in place to be calling on individuals within higher in the organization and also laterally. Maybe it's in the maybe it's in a department. Maybe if you're trying to sell manufacturing and the ordering source or the HR is the decision maker, but you need to build relationships with maybe the production manager or the plant manager. So you have to look at each account with who are the key players, who are the influencers, and who within my organization, within my staffing firm would be best suited for developing that relationship. So a must is you have to have a strategic customer service plan, if you will, in place. Just like on the flip side, you must have a strategic sales plan in place. So I really encourage you to take a look at your client base and what is the strategic plan, not only from a relationship perspective to make sure that the higher ups have contacts and have relationships being built and a plan for that, but also those in the different function areas, whether it's in accounting or it's in manufacturing or marketing, depending on what type of service and staffing you're providing. But also you have to have a strategic plan in place from a account penetration. You need to look at your account and say, what percentage of the business do I have? What other temporary services or staffing services or recruitment firms are they utilizing? What other departments utilize staffing? We have to ask those questions on an ongoing basis, and making sure by doing this, by implementing these key factors, you're going to be able to, what I call, keep all cracks closed. Because what happens if you have a crack in the door, if there's a crack in your service plan, that is giving the sales individuals from the competition an opportunity to wedge that crack open and take that business from you. So we must be serious about making sure, one, that foolproof service delivery process, that you have a process, every single individual in your organization is trained on it and you're following it consistently. Two, that you're delighting the customer, you're going above and beyond. Three, you have that rapport, trust, relationship built. And four, you're laddering that service strategy to reach all the decision makers to lock in those relationships. So let's take a look at the next slide, 6 steps developing customers for life. So now that we've kind of just broad brushed what's important, what are some of those factors, we're going to go into a little bit more detail now on what are the actual 6 steps. And I'm going to briefly go through right now the 6 steps of know your role. Know your role as a service provider. What is your role? What's expected from you? What's expected from the customer? The second step is deliver the wow factor. The common misconception in the industry is that all staffing firms are the same. You're all the same. We're a commodity. And we're not a commodity, and we're not all the same. Depending on what your standard operating procedures are, depending on what you're training, depending on what your marketing plans are, depending on what you're delivering is what sets you apart. So you must deliver that wow factor in client service. The third one is remove all barriers. We're going to talk about a way of handling conflict, handling resistance successfully. The fourth step is create top-of-mind awareness. You need to have your staffing firm in the mind's eye of your customer at all times. At all times, and it needs to be a positive mindset, a positive awareness. So we'll talk about that. And the fifth step is measure success. You have to have metrics in place to measure. You need to know where you're going, and you need to measure it and monitor it, and then make adjustments when necessary. And the sixth step is being empowered for success, and that's where that power from within comes out, as you're being equipped and have the knowledge that you then have everything it takes to lock in those customers for life. So let's start diving in a little deeper here and taking a look at that. The 6-step process, developing customer for life, developing customer loyalty slide. We just talked about that, know your role. You need to know your role, and what I like to tell service professionals and sales professionals, anybody connected in a staffing firm, you have a job because of our customers. That is the bottom line, is the only reason I have a job is because I have a customer. So I need to do everything I can to keep that customer happy. to keep adjusting my service strategy, not to become negative and complacent. Complacency is how we lose business, because we become complacent. That's where that hardened heart that I talked about comes in, where, oh, they're all temporary employees are the same. They're so unreliable. It's not that. We deal with it, the human factor, but that's where we have to have the process in place so that we can have a little bit more control with that human factor, so we can have a process in place when the human factor kicks in and that individual where there is turnover or where there is an attendance issue, that we then have a process in place so that we can make adjustments, so that we can continue to make a positive impact on turnover in reducing it, not letting it increase. Maybe we have to analyze it and implement a new orientation plan. Maybe we have to do on-site orientations where the individual, maybe in a manufacturing environment, we need to bring the temporary employees into the site so they can see the facility and see what the environment is. Maybe it's loud, maybe it's the smell, whatever it is in a manufacturing environment, we need to make sure that individual will be able to perform successfully there and be happy in that type of environment. So there's a lot of different ways we can be creative to address that. So know your role. Deliver that wow factor, taking it to that next level of success, removing all the barriers, delivering that, creating that top of mind awareness, and again measuring that success so that you can be empowered for success. And we're going to talk about that now. Go on to step 1 and 2, developing customers for life. Knowing your role in building customer loyalty, it starts with understanding your customer expectations. You must have a thorough, the person servicing your accounts and the backup person, or however you have it structured within your organization, you have to have a thorough understanding of your customers' products and services. Who are their major customers? Who are their suppliers? Who are their competitors? You almost need to know their business better than they do. What are their future, what's the future company direction and strategy? Are they expanding? Are they in a high acquisition mode? You know, you need to know this from what's coming on down the road. If they're expanding, what departments are you expanding in? That's where you need to use your active listening skills, use your questioning skills to find out what areas are you expanding. Always be thinking, how can we help them? We want to develop partnerships for life, not just customers for life, but partnerships and business alliances. We want to be able to, as they're growing and changing, your service strategy and plan needs to grow and change accordingly. And the only way you can do that is through knowledge. So that's where that laddering of the relationships come in. You need, maybe the ordering source doesn't know what the company's strategic plan is, but somebody in your company needs to have a relationship with somebody in your client that has that knowledge, so that you can be proactive in coming up with solutions that can help them with their hiring decisions and with their plans. What are their past experiences been? Especially if I call it the changing of the guard. Especially if you have turnover within your client and a new ordering source comes in, or a new contact, maybe even at a higher level. You need to find out what's been their past experience. If they've had a long-time relationship with another firm, you need to know that, because again, this is a high-risk client at this point of losing them. So that's important to find out what's their expectations, what's their experience been. You know, and what I call from a sales perspective, they're hot buttons. Clients, you need to know prospects' hot buttons, but from a customer perspective, you need to know what's their hot buttons, what's important to them, what's the company culture and management style. It goes beyond just the skills and the functions and the job responsibilities. You need to know the culture and the management style so that you can make that fit more successful with your contract or direct hire employees. You also have to have a thorough understanding of the position requirements in addition to that. What's their hiring process and expectations? What's the reporting structure? What's the company's expectations, wants, and needs for this position? What's the job description? What are the critical success factors for this position? What would make one person succeed and one person not? I need to know that when I'm going to make a fit with a contract employee or a direct hire. I need to know that So that'll help me in my selection process. That'll help me in delighting the customer. The more information you can gather, the more successful you're going to be at delighting that customer. Knowledge is power. You have to gain knowledge, and you have to do that through questioning. And maybe it's not the ordering source. Maybe it's like, you know, I need to speak to somebody in the department. That would really help me out. I want to help you out and have the best top candidate possible. To do that, it's important for me to speak to that individual. Wouldn't you agree? You know, try to get their buy-in. The complete compensation package, benefits, vacation, to know that, especially if it's a contract to hire, that'll help you in selling the candidates on that position. And what's the attitude and aptitude requirements of the ideal candidate? These are some key questions I want to know, so it'll help me in delighting the customer as well as delighting the candidate or the contract employee. So these are some key expectations that we want to make sure that we're meeting. Know your response. That's your responsibility. Your responsibility is to deliver value. To deliver value. That's your responsibility as whether you're a recruiter or a client service specialist, whoever's in charge of your accounts, account manager, it's your responsibility to deliver value. It's your responsibility that's accountability. I'm accountable to find out what's important to that client, and I'm responsible for then delivering that and continuously improving upon that. So with that, the second step there is that wow factor. That's how you're going to differentiate yourself from the competition, by being creative and consistent, by understanding the company's business requirements and position requirements in such a detailed manner that it's almost like you work at that company, that you can make those types of selections, and education on the flip side in educating your contract employees, having that detailed orientation, having the on-site tours, or having the additional testing or requirements based on what the customer is in need of. Along those same lines with interviewing, and that's a whole nother webinar on interviewing and making sure you're asking the right questions to make that match. So that's going to just dovetail right into delivering that wow factor, being that differentiator. Because what do customers want? They want top talent, they want reduced turnover, they want responsiveness, and that's our job to deliver that. And before I move on, I just want to share briefly some statistics that I just pulled up and I thought were really right on with this webinar in why do customers leave. And this was a survey that was done by the American Association for Quality, and they came up with what are some of the reasons customers are lost. And like moved away was 3%, influenced by friends 5%, lured away by the competition was 9%, dissatisfied with the service or the product was 14%, turned away by an attitude of lack of concern on the part of the person servicing them was 68%. I was just amazed at that. And based on my experience in the industry, that I would have to agree with that. When we start to become complacent, our customers are in jeopardy of being lured away by the competition. I think that's where that crack in the door comes in, is that lack of concern on part of the person servicing, where we just, oh well, what do they expect? Temporaries they're going to have turnover at that low rate. Having that kind of mindset, we can't go down to that level. We have to rise above it and say, no, what can I do to minimize the turnover? Yes, it is low paid and there will be some turnover. That's a factor, and that is going to happen, and the client knows that as well. They tried to staff it on their own. But what can I do to lower that? What can I do maybe in my interviewing questions? Maybe I could ask some additional questions to minimize that. Maybe my recruiting efforts, maybe I can look in a different area code or a different area to recruit a different group of individuals to send out to this client. You know, that's where you have to be creative, and if you have a negative mindset, you can't be creative. You can't be creative because you already are, you're complacent and you're saying, oh, well, that's just going to happen. And it will happen. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not being realistic. I mean, I am being realistic, but it's how you attack it. Because if you're not going to attack it, your competition will. They'll come up with a way, and they will take that business from you. So that's where we have to have that strategic service strategy in place to say, what can we do to make a difference? So let's talk about that in the next step, which is step 3, remove the barriers to building customer loyalty. This is where conflict comes in, because it's just like what we talked about. You may have turnover, whether it's in any type of position in the staffing, whether it's a direct hire or a staffing situation. We're going to have to learn how to handle difficult situations, confrontation successfully. And the first step is not to get defensive. We're going to talk about some mechanics, some specifics now on handling conflict successfully. Whether it's with the contract employee or customer, don't get defensive. The first thing you want to, once you become defensive, you're already well on your way to losing control of the situation. Especially in our business, once you start escalating, the other person on the other end is going to escalate right there with you. But by remaining calm and professional, you're going to bring that person's emotional level down. Always be polite when they're expressing their dissatisfaction, and try to look at it from their point of view. Try to look at it from their point of view. We're there to service them. We're there to give them value. We're there to send out reliable employees that are going to be committed to the duration of their assignment. And it didn't happen. They're disappointed. They're upset. We understand. So be in the second step. So the first step is don't take it personally. The second step is identify the issues. Why? Why didn't they work out? Be empathetic and paraphrase back what they're saying. You want to show that you're listening. I can certainly understand why you feel that way. I understand you're really upset right now. Acknowledge they're upset. Not that you want to feed it, but you want to acknowledge. They want to be heard. Do not interrupt them. That's the worst mistake you can make when you're dealing with somebody that is irate. Just put yourself in their shoes. When you're upset, when you're in a service situation, you want to be heard. Let them vent. Let them get it out. Then you want to paraphrase back. What I understand you saying is the person did not work out because of X, Y, Z. Or tell me more why. In order for me to rectify this, and I am going to do everything I can to make this right. I'm committed to making it right in the best of my ability. You want to reassure them that you're going to make it right to the best of your ability. Excuse me. So you want to be able to then probe to gain understanding of the situation. Tell me more. What exactly happened? Describe to me. When you say they didn't have the right skills, what specific skill set were you looking for? You want to just not go back without asking questions and try to refill it or try to address their concern. You want to make sure you probe to the point, you ask questions to the point that you have total 100% clarification. Then, once you feel you have it right in your mind, you need to then parrot it back to the client once again. Okay. So thank you for your patience. What I hear you saying is you need this, this, and this. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. You're also getting them in what I call the yes mode. As you continue to parrot back or confirm back what they're saying, you're getting them into agreement with you. So you're being able to operate in unity in one accord. So you're both solving it together. So it's a real positive way to turn what's negative into a positive and resolve it. All they want is resolve. They either want a replacement or they want the person to be removed or whatever it is that they need to have happen. It's our job to make that happen. So the next step is resolve it. Resolve the situation. You've identified it, now resolve it. Correct it. Decide the best course of action. And maybe you think the customer made a mistake. That does happen. But you want to be mindful of how you present that to them. You might want to use phrases like, well, I thought otherwise, but I could be wrong. But let's explore this together. Based on our conversation, based on the email, this is what I said. I apologize if you misconstrued what it meant, but this, so you want to educate them, and then they may say, oh, I get it, okay, I see. So you still may need to confront them, but it's all how you do it. It's all how you do it. That's where the delighting the customer comes in, is how you resolve the situations that come up in your daily interactions. And then once you've resolved the situation, you let them know what you're going to do. Communicate. I can't say that enough. That you let them know what you're going to do. You gain agreement. Is that good? Will that resolve this to your satisfaction? Yes. Again, you're getting them in that yes mode. Okay, I'm going to get right on it. And then as you're working on it, and things happen, we know, in this industry, and maybe there's a delay, or maybe something, you need to communicate back with them. Follow up. Don't just leave them hanging. You need to call them back and say, okay, I just want, even if it's no news, you need to let them know, I'm still working. I've got some calls out. I'm still hopeful. Hang on with me. Okay. So make sure you're communicating early and often with the client. So those are some key steps in removing the barriers to building customer loyalty, is by handling the situation successfully. And with this process, by following it, you'll be able to diffuse situations. You'll be able to handle situations that'll really delight the customers. Because one thing's for sure in this business, you will have trouble. That will happen. That's what we do in customer service. That's what we do in staffing. It's all how we resolve these situations, how we communicate. It's all in what we say. So let's take a look now at, so that is step 3. Let's take a look at step 4 on the next slide. Create top-of-mind awareness. That is where I always want to make sure that my clients are thinking of me as a staffing firm in a positive light. And these are some really basic ways that you're going to build that top-of-mind awareness. Always use their name. This may seem so basic, but there's no sweeter sound than the sound of your own name. You always want to be addressing them, Mr. So-and-so, or if you're on a first name basis, or always say please and thank you. Always show them you appreciate your business. Thank them for their business. Thank them for their patience. For the contract employees as well, I always look at customers as internal and external. You always want to say please and thank you. As rushed as we are and as hurried as we are, we need to slow down and do the basics better than anyone. Always be empathetic. I understand. I can see where you're coming from. Always paraphrase. We talked about that. What I hear you saying is this. Are you in agreement if we do this? And always communicate early and often. I also want to talk about, on the next step, measuring success. And this is one of the keys to the service delivery system that we talked about, having that standard operating system in place, is you have to know what the metrics are that you're measuring, whether it's turnover, whether it's responsiveness, time to fill, and have those in place on a company-wide basis and also on a client-by-client basis, that every client is unique and may have different needs. And this is almost like a report card. It's like we really are going to stand behind what we say we're going to do. And that helps us to be accountable and to make sure that we're doing our very best to continuously have a positive impact on client service, on customer service. So you want to make sure you've implemented that service, that standard operating procedure for every single function in your organization. You also want to make sure you have delivery metrics, that we're measuring, we're inspecting what we say. Whether it's, you could also be doing customer service surveys. You could have an outside company do surveys for your client base, or somebody in your management team could be having those conversations. And through that information, that's where you must continuously be developing plans to improve the quality that you're delivering. Customer service review sessions, I strongly, and I know some clients may not agree to it, but as much as you can get that, that's developing the rapport, the relationship, the communication, is you need to meet with your customer on a minimum of quarterly. For your larger customers, minimum of quarterly. You need to be sitting down and reviewing these metrics, finding out what are their goals, what's changed in your business, what's coming up. Again, so you can be a business alliance partner, if you will, and come up with some creative ideas for them. Wow, you're hiring for all these positions. How can we help you? What can we do? Maybe we can help you with reviewing resumes, or maybe we can help you with the interviewing or the staffing or the testing or whatever it is that you can come up with some creative ideas to help them meet and achieve their business staffing initiatives and their goals. So you want to implement those customer review sessions. And in that, that's where that process improvement, where they may say, you know what, your turnover is you need to know your turnover, you're having issues with your turnover before the customer tells you. If it's flipped, then you have a problem, because you need to know, our turnover is getting too high, or my fill ratio is too low, or whatever it may be, that we're not meeting the metrics or the staffing expectation for that client. We need to then look at the process, improve it, to say, what can I do differently? And maybe it's something that we need to ask the client to do. Maybe we need to approach them and say, wow, if you could do this, this would help us do this. Could you, maybe it's with getting back to you in a timely manner on resumes. Maybe they're waiting too long and you're losing your top candidates to other positions. You need to have a conversation and say, we want to help you. We want to do what we can to take this to the next level. And I have some ideas that I know would make a positive impact. How about if when I send you a resume, I know you're busy, but what about if, would it be realistic if we said by the end of the day that you could get back with me? Because that would make sure that we're keeping these top level candidates, because unfortunately we're losing them. And I don't want you to lose out. I want you to win. This is somebody that brings such a great asset to your company that I don't want your competitors to get them. I'm loyal to you. So what can we do to shorten that interview review time, or the resume review time? You know, get them involved in the decision making. Get them, ask them, how can we work it out? Here's a couple of ideas. What do you think? So you have to have those two-way conversations on an ongoing basis, you know, with your clients, to ensure that you're measuring success and you're continuously improving with your top customers. Great. And lastly, we're moving to step 6 now. That based on the information that we've talked about, these keys to success, that we've talked about being responsive, being creative, having that foolproof service delivery process and following it, making sure that every single individual in your organization is trained on it and adhering to it. And I really would suggest, whatever your standard operating procedure is, whatever the expectations are, whatever those key factors are in your organization, tie that into the performance evaluation of your team. Because if I'm being graded on that for my performance, for my raise, I know, or my bonus, I know that these areas are important. And I would also take it a step further and have inspect what you expect. Have an audit in place. Have a process in place where you can actually audit some of these functions to make sure, whether it's on the computer, that you can run through and make sure that they're doing certain things, or where you're job shadowing them, having somebody in your organization job shadow to make sure, from a, not just a we're catching you, but let's help you be better. We want to develop talent. We want you to achieve a level of success that you never even imagined you could. So you want to constantly be encouraging and coaching your team in following these service delivery processes to take your company to that next level. So And don't forget to celebrate success. You know, and encourage your team as you're servicing your clients, because it is a lot of work. Sometimes it's weekends, it's after hours, it's a 24/7 job in our industry. But celebrate your success. Look at what you're doing. Look at the growth. Focus on the good as well as having the lessons learned for those clients that maybe you lost or you didn't get the majority of the market share. So implement these practical strategies, these practical applications into your daily servicing of your clients, and you will see that you'll be locking out the competition, you'll be putting a plug in the leaky bucket, and you'll be developing those customers for life. So that is, in a nutshell, what this workshop entails, is really learning some of the fundamental truths for delivering extraordinary customer service. So I just open it up now, or turn it back to you, David.
Great. Thank you very much. And great information, Teresa. We actually had quite a few questions that have come in throughout the presentation.
Oh,
and
okay,
I'm going to start with the last one first. Someone had asked if you could please supply the statistic percentages again. 68% of customers leave because of lack of concern. And do you have any more information about the article you referenced?
Yes, that was the American Association for Quality, and they conducted a large survey of customers throughout the country. This was throughout the country and throughout all industries, but it was for quality. And it was 3% moved away. Actually, 1% was death, 3% moved away, 5% influenced by friends, 9% lured away by the competition, 14% were dissatisfied with the service or product, excuse me, and 68% were turned away by an attitude of lack of concern on the part of the person servicing them.
Okay, great. Thank you. Another question, going back to the beginning when you talked about laddering. What do you do when HR says, I don't want you to talk to anybody else?
Oh, that comes up, doesn't it? Okay, my opinion is you have to tread lightly, because if this is an existing client and you've already established that pattern, if you will, you do not want to make that person so mad that they drop you. So you have to have a lot of discernment in this business, a lot of judgment, that you may want to push it a little and say, you know, but blame it on your boss. My boss is really insistent that, you know, he really wants to meet so-and-so, you know, or, you know, you can get around it so you're not the bad guy if you've got that relationship, and say, I understand, but he just wants to, you know, meet him. I guess he thinks he might know him, or, you know, you just want to tread lightly. You want to still push it, but you don't want to go over somebody's head and totally make them so mad that they're going to kick you out. I recommend in the selling process the same, but I always figure I don't have the business. What do I have to lose? I need to get this business. So I'll probably ladder a little bit more, even if I'll just play dumb and, oh, I'm sorry, you weren't available. You know, sorry, you weren't home, you weren't there, and I just had to get that information, or I had to fill out this report, and I had to get that. I'm so sorry. You know, you just grovel, but it's a judgment call. But I would try to push it as much as I could, letting them, you know that, you know, it's your boss's desire. And so did that answer their question? Or
yeah, I think so. That was great. Thank you. Another question going back to the beginning was talking about creating a service experience. And just if you could share any examples of what you've coached companies to do and how they physically plan out and lay out the experience they want to deliver.
Yes. Well, it's important that as a staffing company that you identify for your firm what that extraordinary service looks like. From everywhere from like arrival calls to the quality quarterly review sessions. It's important that that service delivery experience is tying in with what that customer is desiring, what's important to them, and customizing your service experience directly to what's important to them. So for example, I have a client that their service experience is they have a very in-depth orientation process and interviewing process that's mirroring the clients, because they want to be able to hire these employees in time. They use the staffing firm as a hiring tool, and this staffing firm has brought in evaluations, orientation, their actual interviewing questions. They have totally mirrored what the client expectations are, and they're delivering that. So it's not like a canned type of their own staffing firm's information. They're doing a pre-screening for the staffing firm, but then they're taking it one level further and customizing it totally for that customer, so they're having that service experience. And it's consistent through the whole organization, so no matter who answers, everything's documented in a they have a program for that where they've documented every single aspect of that customer, so anybody can pull it up and they would know everything from products that they delivered to down to the expectations of the individual per job assignment.
That's great. Love the example. One of the things, if I can just kind of add something that I remember hearing a speaker talk about, and it wasn't really so much in just dealing with customer service, but also internal employee service, and he talked about a concept called planned spontaneous recognition, which in essence meant I'm going to delight people by surprising them, and they're going to think it's a surprise because it wasn't a planned event. But the reality is I had a calendar of when I was planning. So Teresa, you talked a little bit about talking to people at least once a quarter. So maybe in addition to having a planned sit down, our team has a budget where they can do something special to delight the customer on a periodic basis, but they keep kind of a record of who we've done and when. So you're building into your service process these little positive surprises that lead to an overall extraordinary experience.
Great. That's a great idea. That reaching out to your client, because I can guarantee you, and I wouldn't just wait till quarterly. You need to be having weekly connects with your customers, because if you're not connecting and reaching out to your clients, guess who is? Your competition. That's another big mistake that we make, is that we don't have any people placed out there. We're not currently actively recruiting for an order, so we're not talking to our customer. That is, especially coming off of what we just came off of in the economy. That's when we needed to be reaching out more than ever to our customers.
Well, that brings me to another one of the questions that came up. And if you talk about creating top-of-mind awareness, how do you know when you've communicated too much? And likewise, when is it best to communicate in person, on the phone, or via email?
I would vary my contact. I would customize it to the customer, because some of them are like, you know what, you just got to email me. I can't talk to you. And then I would do what I could on a customer by customer basis too. I would definitely do what they want me to do. If they only want me to respond by email, I would do that. But I would still throw in like a monthly call, let them know, can I take you, I'd like to take you to lunch, or let's try to get in front of their face if all possible. But I would never want to do anything, because that's not delighting the customer. If they don't want to talk to me, then I'm not going to force them. But I have to make sure that I let them know I appreciate your business. I want to do whatever I can to continuously improve. What can we do better? I want to continuously be putting myself before them in a very humble way, letting them know how much I appreciate them. But I would say I want to talk to, if they'll talk to me, I want to talk to them at least every week. And if not, maybe it's like an email, or maybe it's an article that I read, like they like boating, or they like golf, or shooting them an article, email, something like that too. So you could vary it up. But I also want to, top of mind awareness is I want to, when I'm talking to them, finding out, what can we help you with? What's going on? I want to keep business expansion as well as relationship building in my mind.
That's great stuff. Actually, I want to just build on one thing you said a little bit in terms of sending articles. We've always been huge believers in using content in addition to sending the personal stuff, teaching people more about when, why, and how to use staffing with some of your follow-up communications, whether it's an email. One of the things that I'm kind of going back to the future here, but I've become a big fan of direct mail again because people's inboxes are getting overloaded with email, and it really stands out when you find a decent article that's educational about staffing, put a little note on it saying, hey, this is a great topic I thought you'd find interesting, and then use that as the basis for a follow-up call. It's a very soft sell.
That's,
I had another
great.
question.
I think that's positive.
That just came in about, do you have know of any samples of a set of SOPs that are generic or could be altered as required for our own companies?
Well, that's what I do as part of my business. I develop standard operating procedures specifically for the staffing company or to the staffing industry.
Terrific. So I guess, Tim, the answer is the best way to get that is to call Teresa.
There you go.
Another question that came in is if there are any specific examples of wows you've seen companies implement in their service process.
Yes. Some of the wows that that come to mind are a lot of doing the little things that we've talked about is what wows the customer. When you do that consistently, is making that service experience not just a point in time, but an ongoing process. That by wowing that customer is really providing service that's going above and beyond. It's anticipating their needs. It's like, you know what, call the client. I know you're thinking of, maybe you know what they're looking on down the road, to be proactive in contacting them with, I was just thinking of you. I wanted to think of you first before I presented this to any other customers. You came to my mind first. You know, really showing them the uniqueness and the value that you place on that individual and their company. You know, that's wowing them. I thought of you first. You know, I want to go above and beyond to do what I can for you. You know, I know some of the services are 24/7, where they offer one of their individuals is on call, and typically they don't ever get called. But it's like a wow factor that, wow, you mean your service is there 24/7 if we need you? And then they rotate it within their whole organization, and that's a wow to some of their customers. Especially this company happens to do a lot of light industrial.
Great stuff. And actually, I recently had a couple of examples of other wows from some of our clients. One of which was using candidate videos, and this company was taking brief introductory videos to every candidate, and as they sent out resumes to be reviewed, they were sending out the video clips as well, and two benefits happened. One, some of the clients they sent it to were just blown away, said this is great because not only do I get the piece of paper with the credentials, but I get a little introduction to the person's personality, and two, to the benefit of the staffing company, several of the clients said they no longer needed to interview those temporary employees because the video was able to suffice. The other side of that wow is the same technology, using the videos, but in service to the candidates, being able to provide a better orientation to the client so the candidate knows exactly what to expect. They've actually seen a little introduction to the client, their facility, the job function, and now when that candidate shows up, they're really ready to work, which of course the employer likes as well.
Good.
The next question was, in terms of delivery metrics, are there any specific examples of metrics you recommend tracking?
Definitely turnover, time to fill would be two major ones that I would strongly recommend tracking that. Those would be two off the top of my head. Depending on your clients and what's important to them or what type of challenges you have, that could vary. But I would definitely take a look at turnover and time to fill. And you could also just do a general customer service survey to your customers, just finding out what level of service you're providing.
Excellent. And if any of you participate in the Innovero Net Promoter Program, or the Best of Staffing, doing the Net Promoter Scores is one more thing that you could do is one of those metrics. Okay, we have time for one more question, and the final question just came in, and it was in reference to an earlier question. And this individual said, we have a customer who said they're using other staffing agencies, however, will keep us in mind. What's the best way to proceed with this prospective client?
Well, I'd want to find out why, oh, that's great that you've got a lot of business that you're using several services, but why? Why are you using several services? I'd want to find out why, because maybe it's because, well, one can't, maybe in their mindset they think one can't handle it all. In reality, you're a full-service staffing company and you can maybe. So I'd want to find out why. And I'd also want to ask them, I think that's where in the staffing industry we don't go far enough. We just say, oh, okay, we'll call you back. We don't probe enough to say why. Why? Wow, why would you need, and then, or I'd say, wow, why would you need several? Like, that sounds like that's not normal when one could do it. We service, we could service you in all those different areas. I'd want to find out why, and also what would it take? And then probe them more on, well, what's working with them? What's not working? If you could change one thing, what would it be? Rate them on a 1 to 10. What would you rate them? What would make them a 10? What do we have to do to be considered? Have you ever thought of consolidating? So I'd want to be throwing out some conversation to them. Because maybe they're in that situation, you find out they didn't make the decision, it's somebody else. So you then need to get a hold of that person.
Terrific, thank you.
And be able to help you.
Thank you. And just if I can build on that, in terms of during the sales call, probing on why, I think is an excellent idea right during the call. But then after the call, let's assume you're not going to convince them that day that they're going to switch their business to you. But after the call, do the same things you would do to an existing customer to show you care about them with regular communication, adding lots of value in how you communicate, so you're not wasting time with calls saying, hey, do you have any more staffing needs, or did any issues come up your current vendors fill, or not just begging and pleading to be a backup, but now you're sharing information that's teaching them more about staffing, that shows you're interested in a relationship with them, that shows you really would go above and beyond the call of duty as compared to maybe one of the current vendors. And through your actions and follow-up, regular email, direct mail, occasional telephone calls, but always in a way that's adding value and fostering the building of a relationship, you get to the point where people start to trust you and they say, you know what, you're doing so much and you're not even my vendor, you're better than my current vendor, and eventually you're going to get that shot. All right, to wrap things up for today, there was one last question which just came in that I want to address, and it was asking about the question of video being discriminating. And this is a very hot topic right now because video resumes are becoming more and more prevalent. There has been some recent issues with where some of the courts have said it is not discriminatory. I'd say it's still up in the air. There's some great information available through the website of a company called Vipe, V-I-P-E, and their website URL is vipepower.com. And because they do videos and they provide a video platform for the staffing industry, they've got some very good information about the legalities of videos when used in the hiring process. So to everyone, hope you'll join me in thanking Teresa for taking time out of her busy day to join us for today's webinar. No question, customer service is one of the most critical issues in the staffing industry. So Teresa, thank you very much. This was great information. I hope everybody took lots of notes. I know I did. And we'll now go back to your company and look at how to implement these ideas. If you have questions, please don't be shy. Reach out and contact Teresa. Her name was available in the slides. And this webinar was recorded, and the recording should be up and available within about a week.